Wednesday. It is October 27th. Getting a late start. It's a little after 11. I had to clean up leaves and get the garage clean enough to, I felt sanitary brewing today. And it's a Sunday and the grandkids are away until 5 o'clock. So I want to be done at least with everything I need to do and cleaning and etc. and relax for an hour before they show up. It's been a little more interesting. Let's walk around. We're getting ready for Halloween, of course, and then we've got a 2-year-old, so some things are too scary, but these are pretty cool. These were made for me by one of my buddies, Arlen. He's a great guy, and yeah, they're my box pumpkins now. Aren't those pretty cool? Those things are sweet. I kind of dig on those. And then we've got all of our spooky stuff going on over by the door. Things hanging up over here. Pumpkins, more pumpkins to be carved, and then we've got our little Dracula coffin, which Dracula will appear in there later. So I'm keeping busy with the grandsons. They're now 2, 5, and 8 years old respectively, and talk about your physical therapy. I'm gonna get things set up and we'll get brewing. Today we're gonna make what I'm calling my crystal Weissbier recipe. This was not easy to come up with. There are a lot of different styles of Weissbiers. In the US, we always talk about Hefeweizen. What I'm gonna make today, my recipe, I'm actually looking for something that's closer to a Weissbier, a Kristalweizen, with a hint moving towards like a dunkel, kind of an in-between, if you will. So I'm going to give you the basic recipe up front that I'm kind of following. We're going to have 5.5 pounds of German wheat by Betz Malls, 2.5 pounds of German Munich, 1.5 pounds of Vienna, and again I went with the best malls, the German style, and then 1.5 pounds of Caramunich 60L. It's actually I think 63. And then I'm gonna do 60 minutes with Hllertau Mittelfrüh. Actually I didn't get the Mittelfrüh, so it's just a Hllertau, probably US version. 1 ounce at 60 minutes, and that's it. Pretty simple, straightforward. Let's get going. I find it's always interesting as to what inspires us to make a different recipe, you know. In this particular case, it was pretty simple. Barbara and I, my wife, hello Barb, we love going over to one of the local Minimum locations. This one's Old Rock Creek Tavern. Great old place, kind of out in the country. And we like going there in between meals, get an hors d'oeuvre, some adult beverages, and play cards when it's nice and quiet. Just a slip away, you know. And they had a Weissbier, Hefeweizen they called it, but it's a Weissbier. A little more Americanized, a little more extra hops and so forth. But it followed in that Weizen crystal category, which I just really dug on. It's reminiscent kind of a Oktoberfest, but not. It's in the Weizen category. You get that banana and clove type esters coming off the true Hefeweizen, you know, German yeast style, which is real fun. It was like, you know, I'd love to have some of that on tap. That'd be a great fall beer. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get this grains going so we can be ready, but that's what inspired today's beer. Looks good. Good crush. So back onto my Weissbiers. I just found that an interesting topic. If you've ever gone through and researched recipes, there's a few common things that you'll find out there, like special Carafa II will be in it a lot, you know, and various type things. Your German wheat, of course. Some throw in Pilsner, which I don't know, that doesn't work for me for the grain bill. But I get when they're throwing in Vienna and some of the other, like Munich, makes a lot of sense to me. But it's interesting. It's an interesting topic, and how varied some, like even winning recipes are, and making in theory, the same styles of beer. But I've never really found a good crystal, so Weissbier, a crystal style, and that's kind of what I'm endeavoring to do. It'd be interesting to see how it looks. I'm okay with it being hazy, but typically it's a clear beer. So one thing I think about doing is actually killing off the yeast and allowing it to clear out more. But is that going to change it? Because you usually have yeast suspended in Weissbiers. But the crystal type must be filter or cold crash somehow. So if you know more about that, let me know. It is time. So back to these Weissbiers. The German Weissbier styles, like Hefeweizen, are generally more than 50% wheat. And it's not uncommon to see them, you know, in that 65% wheat as far as the malt bill goes. A lot of people are worried about stuck mashes at that point, which I understand. Anyway, I decided to go closer to that 50% wheat, which is why you saw I put in a lot of Vienna, Munich, and Caramunich. But I'm hoping that since I've got the German style Weizen yeast that will impart the banana and the clove, that I will get more of a good German style beer. We are mashing in at, in theory, 154, be a little above that because of the conversion with Celsius. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop on this. I'm going to try mixing it. It's actually something that's recommended to really get a better efficiency. But I don't often do it. Thought I'd give it a whirl this time again. We've got about 19 minutes more left of the mash. Alright, we'll go ahead and restart. And there we go. I was reviewing an SJ Port Challenge beer 2019 while wrapping this up. Look at this. This is a beautiful beer. They scored well with me. I'll admit to that. There's a raspberry goes. Alright, mash is done. Got my, you can't see down below, but I got a special clean, sanitized thing that I put that on top of. I've thought about getting a pump to do some of this. Okay, we're going to let that continue to drain, to sparge. It's still going rather slow, I will tell you. So the wheat does make a difference. I think in part because I got to crank this up a little higher, I'm realizing. All right, that's right in the color range that we want, so that's good. And we'll get this chilled down and kind of see what our pre-boil gravity's at. So while this is still draining, it takes a good bit of time, honestly. I'm going to go ahead and let this start moving towards boiling right away. All right, we've hit 100 Celsius, so we'll take this one off, and oh yeah, there we go. We are hit hot break. You didn't see it, but it was pretty close to the top there with foam. Got a nice active boil. I set my unit to actually 101 Celsius, which is a little high, but with winter being here and it's cool out, it just makes sure that it maintains a good boil. Oh yeah, it's already showing that we're a minute and a half into the boil. So we're going to go ahead and get our 1 ounce of Hllertau in here. Now, there are a few versions of Hllertau out there. I would prefer to have Hllertau middle fruit, but you know, they just said Hllertau, and so I'm going to imagine that this is probably an American Hllertau, and I'm not going to be able to get picky, but we'll take what we can get. I don't leave the cone-shaped top on there during the boil. What I found is that with the steam rising, with it funneling like that, I end up with the hops coming up the sides and sticking to the side of that top, which is counterproductive for us. We're not leaving those hops in for the entire boil. So that's why I always take it off and just leave it completely open during the boil. Meanwhile, I'm going to go and get all the everything else cleaned up, the malt pipe and everything, and have that all ready to go and be put away, so that we can speed this along, make it easier on my back as we go. Got my water filter hanging upside down. I do blow through one end, through the hose end, and I just let that sit there for a good hour or so, draining. I'll do the same after doing a good drain, also with my jaded chiller. Oh man, I love my jaded chiller. I've dropped temps so fast. I'm down to 34 Celsius. Geez, 21.5. My God, that's obscenely fast. I love it. Jaded brewing chillers, man. You're talking 5 minutes or less. It's incredible. Nice caramelly color. That's pretty much what I wanted. So we're using WLP 300, which is your classic Weizen. It's Hefeweizen saying, but basically it's the version for Weizens that's going to give it the banana and clove esters. We're at 67.3 degrees, which is great. If you ever wonder why I have the blanket going around it, it is to insulate it, and it insulates the heating pad. I actually keep the fermentation chamber usually in the 50 to 55 range, so it's very cool, and it's pumping cold air down here to keep the beers cool, keep them in that 50 to 55 range, which is great. It's good stored temperature. And then by wrapping this around the heating pad, then it allows that to actually warm the beer up, to bring it up to that 68 degrees, and it holds it very well. So I raised the temp for several days for a diacetyl rest, and now I'm going to basically unplug it and let it just chill. So I'm just going to completely take this off now. This won't be a full-on cold crash, but it will drop the temperature and help drop some of the proteins, etc. out. Okay, we're going to close it up. Chamber's about 51 degrees. Got this set to about 50. We'll allow it to go much cooler, but that'll work. That's been just sitting inside my fermentation chamber for about almost 2 weeks now. At about 48 degrees. That's the closest I'm going to get to cold crashing. And no, do I really need to have it in that long? No, not at all. So what I've got is I've got one of my kegs that I have ready, and I always keep a sanitizer sitting in there so that they're clean, ready to go. I can just empty them out. But the nice thing is that I can go ahead and I've already cleaned these, my siphon, but now I'm going to go ahead and kind of stick the line in the sanitizer first. So the outside is pretty much clean. We'll let that sit for a few seconds. And then we're going to start pumping it out to empty it, but we're going to go ahead, which this is ran through extremely hot water. It's been cleaned prior and stored away. And I'm going to go ahead now and also run that sanitizer through this again. Again, it's already been cleaned and sanitized. And then we're going to go ahead and start racking over, and I'll show you how I do that for the extra filtering. Alright, so we've got the sanitizer running through. It's cleaning out the inside of the lines here. And we're just going to go ahead and run it all over our hop filter, which I use for filtering out when I'm racking. So I've also got my bouncer filter on there, and this is the white filter. It's a much more fine filter, so hopefully that will help us a little bit, you know, with clarity. Not a great deal, but we'll take it. Well, for a little bit extra, it's got that great banana and clove smell. It's wonderful. You can see I've got my jaded chiller there. I gave away my old chiller to the neighbor. I love this thing. Okay, so we're all racked over. I'll get a measurement off this in a minute, and then we'll purge the oxygen out of the top and go ahead and get it carbon up. One thing I'd mention though, in making a crystal properly, you know, if I was truly going to do this the right way and get it really clear, since I really can't get the temps down, it doesn't matter too much to me, but I would probably want to rack it over to a secondary to get as much of the flocculence out. Although I find that with my filtering system that I've got, it pretty much takes care of that with that hop filter going in first. But that can't get it that crystal clear type level like the name suggests. So you probably rack it over, maybe even use gelatin, but drop it down to about 35 and leave it there for a number of days to get it really all those proteins to clear out, and then just rack over carefully so you're not pulling anything that might still be in the beer and has dropped out in. All right, here's the sample, and this came out at 1.011, and it's just a little bit darker than a Hefeweizen, so it's going to have just a little bit richer flavor, which I was looking for. It's got that banana and clove on it. Honestly, I would like to have had a little more sweetness, but that's me. That's just my nature. But that's good. So this will be fun to get this one carved up and see how it tastes then. Cheers. Alright, so here we go. I'm just getting over a cold, so I don't want to drink too much. But here it is. It's not as clear as I'd want. It's not bad though. It's fairly clear. And I'll take that because I really don't have a way to totally clear it out. But if you know some other tips and tricks other than if I'd use gelatin and could totally cold crash, let me know. I probably could have racked over a little bit on this one time and let it drop down one more time. Probably would have been a good idea to allow it to condition that way. Let's get the nose. Well, this is not the best glass for nose, but okay. I can tell already it has a deeper scent than a straight Hefeweizen, and you're definitely getting the banana and clove, although the banana and clove when I was opening the lid seemed really boom strong, and this isn't quite as strong. Let's dive in for the taste. Oh, that's nice. It's just like the nose, though. It's a little bit lighter than what I wanted. Admittedly, I did not get the efficiency I wanted, and I don't know if that's because it's wheat, and that's part of it, or I just got a low efficiency. To be honest, I'm not really sure. But, and it's only 5% ABV. It also attenuated down to 1.011, and so that's probably less sweetness that I wanted. One thing I'm curious about is, what do you think about watching the levels and then killing off the yeast at the point that you want it? So like if I kept it at 1.018 and kept more sweetness, it would have been lower ABV, but that might have been better. I think if I do this again, I might beef it up just a little bit as far as how much grains and so forth, and just make it a little bit stronger and maybe a little richer flavor. But outside of this, I really achieved what I was going for, which was not a straight German Hefeweizen, but something that reflects a little bit onto like a Weissbier, and to go clear, which is like a Kristalweizen. Now, true Kristalweizen is going to be lighter though in color. It's not going to look like this. And I would love to explore making a Keller beer eventually. I have enjoyed some of those. But this is a fun little beer. Wow, and at 5%, this is something I can pound down during the holidays. In the future, I might try making this one earlier in the season for fall. Although I have to tell you, I love my Oktoberfest recipe. That one's a winner. If you want to go back and look, that one's great. But this is a great beer. It's kind of fun. I think I'm going to have to try some bigger beers. You know, like maybe a Doppelbock in the future. Something like that. Or some of these other German styles that I've wanted to make. Anyway, this is Kevin at Clements Homebrew saying, life's too short to drink cheap beer and too short not to experiment and make some new fun beers like this one right here. You guys have a great week. Happy brewing and happy Homebrew Wednesday.